Breaking news, CNN has learned there will be a meeting today inside the White House as aides try to manage a potential House vote on the release of the Epstein files. This comes, of course, just hours after Democrats on the Oversight Committee released emails from Jeffrey Epstein himself mentioning Donald Trump by name multiple times. I want to get straight to CNN's Caitlin Polance. Caitlin, what are you learning?
Well, the House is releasing these files, but it's not everything that the federal government has. Dana, there's additional files still held by the Justice Department that some Republicans on Capitol Hill are in support of releasing. And so that is causing a political response inside the White House right now, where there is a meeting planned, or was a meeting planned today, about the House effort to try and force a vote to get the Justice Department, the Trump administration, to release the rest of the FBI files, the Justice Department files, everything from years of the investigation into Jeffrey Epstein and others, things that have not seen the light of day yet. What one source tells me, we have multiple sources confirming that this meeting is happening, but what one source tells me is that this meeting was planning to include some key figures from the Justice Department: the FBI Director Kash Patel, the Attorney General Pam Bondi, the Deputy Attorney General Todd Blanche, and then one of those Republicans in support of transparency, Republican Representative Lauren Boebert of Colorado. So what might happen at this meeting if Boebert could be swayed in a direction on wanting transparency here? That is all something that is going to be at issue, and that the White House is clearly concerned about, having discussions about it. On top of that, Dana, another thing to remember here is that the Justice Department has tried many different ways to distract from releasing the full Justice Department files. They tried to get grand jury records out there. Blanche talked to Ghislaine Maxwell, a co-conspirator in Florida. When Ghislaine spoke to Todd Blanche, she told him that Trump himself never acted inappropriately, and she never saw anything untoward in any way toward underage girls. Dana?
Yeah, but she also said he was never at the house, and in the email, Epstein said he was at the house. So this is going to be a very interesting meeting. The fact that Lauren Boebert is going to be there is especially fascinating. Thank you, Caitlin, for that.
Jeffrey Epstein, a name that has come to symbolize wealth, power, and scandal. A man whose life was a labyrinth of privilege, secrets, and disturbing allegations. For decades, he moved through the corridors of elite society, rubbing shoulders with billionaires, politicians, and royalty. But behind the luxury, the private jets, and the islands lay a darker truth, one that would shock the world and expose a web of crime, manipulation, and influence. This is the story of Jeffrey Epstein, the rise, the crimes, the connections, and the secrets that some wanted buried forever.
Sense sees right through this hoax and clear distraction from the government opening back up again. What's your response to that?
My response is simple. Then release all the files. If the president has nothing to hide, if the press secretary right there in her comments and statement, if they have nothing to hide at the White House or the Department of Justice, then all we want is for them to release the full files. It's very clear. You can't spend your entire campaign saying you're going to do something and make a commitment to the American people and then backtrack. And so we're going to ensure, one, we always are going to protect the victims and survivors. And if they want to clear the president's name, and more importantly, also all of the other men and powerful men that may have been involved, then release the files today.
Born in Brooklyn, New York, in 1953, Jeffrey Epstein grew up in a middle-class family. But his ambitions stretched far beyond the streets of his childhood neighborhood. He began his career as a teacher, a seemingly modest start. Yet it wasn't long before he transitioned into finance, working at Bear Stearns, and eventually building his own financial management firm. Epstein's clients were wealthy, powerful, and often secretive, an ideal gateway to the world of influence he would later inhabit. Epstein's network was his most valuable asset. From tech moguls to former presidents, princes to high-profile academics, he cultivated connections with precision. But whispers about his behavior followed him, a shadow he could never fully escape.
Specifically asked about me because I remind him of his daughter, and she said, well, she's 13 as well. So he knew the first time that he saw me. But he comes over mad because I was crying, and he said that I should be thankful that someone like Donald Trump took my virginity. He basically didn't say took my virginity. He said I should be glad that someone like Donald Trump popped my cherry and not some pimply little 14-year-old. And I just was like, what if I said, what if I get pregnant? Not even talking to him. I didn't want to talk to him. I was talking to Tiffany. And he said, well, you'll get an abortion then, bitch, and then just walked away.
Still talking about Jeffrey Epstein? This guy's been talked about for years.
By the early 2000s, allegations of sexual abuse and trafficking began to surface. Young girls, some barely teenagers, accused Epstein of coercion and exploitation. In 2005, a serious investigation began in Florida after parents reported their daughters had been abused. The case escalated, revealing a pattern of predatory behavior. Girls lured to Epstein's homes under false pretenses, then subjected to sexual abuse. Despite the evidence, Epstein avoided a lengthy prison sentence, reaching a controversial non-prosecution agreement in 2008. He pled guilty to state charges of solicitation of prostitution from a minor and served just 13 months in a private wing of the Palm Beach County Jail. Critics called it a sweetheart deal, highlighting how wealth and influence can shield even the most serious offenders.
Hey everybody, Tim Burchett. Just left the House floor, and I tried to do a UC, unanimous consent, tried to get the Epstein files, get it straight to the floor, just to cut out all this nonsense. And, and the Democrats blocked it, oddly enough. Now here they've had it for 4 years, and they, obviously if there's something there about Trump, they would have released it. And now they're all, let's get it out. Well, I just made a motion to bring it straight to the dadgum floor, and they blocked it. So this is politics. It has nothing to do with what's doing what's right. I mean, it's Washington, D.C. to a T. And again, they ought to be ashamed of themselves, but they're probably not. Thank y'all for sending me here.
Epstein's story is inseparable from the world of power he inhabited. Among his acquaintances were prominent figures, politicians, business leaders, and members of royalty. Prince Andrew, Bill Clinton, and Donald Trump, among others, were all linked to Epstein at various points. While not all were implicated in criminal activity, the associations fueled public scrutiny and conspiracy theories alike. Epstein's private island in the Caribbean, Little St. James, became infamous. Allegations claimed it was a hub for sexual abuse, involving underage girls trafficked from around the world. Flight logs from Epstein's private planes, sometimes called the Lolita Express, revealed a web of high-profile passengers, deepening the mystery of what occurred in these elite circles.
Show that Donald Trump spent likely hours with a victim of Jeffrey Epstein's at Epstein's house. In a new email released by the House Oversight Committee, it shows Jeffrey Epstein and Ghislaine Maxwell talking about how Donald Trump was, quote, the dog that hasn't barked. Further talking about how an alleged victim spent hours at my house with him, referring to it was Jeffrey Epstein's house. The full email from Ghislaine Maxwell to Jeffrey Epstein was on April 2nd, 2011. It said, I want you to realize that the dog that hasn't barked is Trump. Victim spent hours at my house with him. He has never once been mentioned. Police chief, I'm 75% there. Then another email released from January 31st, 2019 from Michael Wolff to Jeffrey Epstein shows victim Mar-a-Lago, identifier Trump said he asked me to resign. Never a member ever. Of course he knew about the girls as he asked Ghislaine to stop. This is proof that Donald Trump knew what Jeffrey Epstein was doing. Folks, this is an absolute bombshell. I will have more updates on my Substack, linked in bio. Subscribe for free, follow for more.
After years of secrecy and whispers, Epstein's past finally caught up with him. On July 6, 2019, he was arrested at Teterboro Airport in New Jersey on federal charges of sex trafficking minors in Florida and New York. Prosecutors described a sprawling network of abuse spanning decades, with girls as young as 14 coerced into sexual acts. For many, this arrest represented long overdue accountability. The arrest was a turning point, shining an unrelenting spotlight on Epstein's actions and his enablers. Investigators began digging into his financial empire, his mysterious wealth, and the identities of those who may have facilitated or ignored his crimes. Just weeks after his arrest, Epstein was found dead in his cell at the Metropolitan Correctional Center in New York City on August 10, 2019. The official ruling, suicide by hanging. But the circumstances surrounding his death have fueled speculation and conspiracy theories. How could a man with such high-profile connections die in a federal jail, under the watch of guards, while awaiting trial for serious crimes? His death left countless questions unanswered, from the fate of his alleged co-conspirators to the extent of his network's influence. For many, Epstein's death represented not closure, but the beginning of a new wave of scrutiny into corruption, secrecy, and power in America.
On several occasions, Ghislaine Maxwell did introduce me to him, and she introduced me to him with a clear message of my being with him in the same way that she had trafficked me and brought me to Jeffrey Epstein.
You met Donald Trump, is it right, through Ghislaine Maxwell?
I did, yes, and I met him on several occasions. Ghislaine Maxwell did introduce me to him, and she introduced me to him with a clear message of my being with him in the same way that she had trafficked me and brought me to Jeffrey Epstein.
While the headlines often focus on Epstein and the powerful figures around him, the victims remain at the center of this story. Survivors like Virginia Giuffre came forward publicly, sharing harrowing accounts of abuse and exploitation. Their courage forced a reckoning and highlighted the human cost of Epstein's crimes. These testimonies also revealed systemic failures, institutions, authorities, and individuals who turned a blind eye. The Epstein case became a symbol of how power can shield abusers and silence victims. Yet, the survivors' voices have refused to be ignored, driving calls for justice and reform.
Jeffrey Epstein's abuse. They are here in the gallery with us this evening. Thank you for being here. Just this morning, House Democrats released more emails showing that Trump knew more about Epstein's abuses than he previously acknowledged. It's past time for Congress to restore its role as a check and balance on this administration and fight for we, the American people. We need to fight for our immigrant communities and veterans. We need to stand up for our public schools, children, and educators. We need to respect tribal sovereignty in our environment. We need to stand up for LGBTQ+ rights, because that's what the American people expect us to do. Fight for them. That is why I will sign the discharge petition right now to release the Epstein files. Justice cannot wait another day. Adelante, mi gente. Muchas gracias. Thank you very much. I yield back.
Even after Epstein's death, the case is far from over. Authorities continue investigating his associates and alleged co-conspirators. Lawsuits, civil cases, and unsealed documents have provided glimpses into the full scope of Epstein's operations. Questions remain about how someone could exploit so many young people without facing real consequences for so long. The Epstein case also ignited broader conversations about systemic abuse, elite privilege, and accountability. It serves as a reminder that power can be dangerous, but transparency and courage can shine a light in the darkest corners.
Appeared to be in something of a full-court press to try and stop the discharge petition from working. Sources are telling CNN that top Trump administration officials held a meeting on this issue, not just at the White House, but in the Situation Room. Now, according to multiple sources, the meeting was said to have included the Attorney General, Pam Bondi, the Deputy Attorney General, Todd Blanche, FBI Director Kash Patel, and Republican Congresswoman Lauren Boebert of Colorado. Boebert is one of the 4 Republican members of the House who has signed the petition.
Jeffrey Epstein's story is a cautionary tale. It is a story of wealth and influence, of crime and secrecy, and of voices finally demanding to be heard. The scandal exposed the vulnerability of those without power and the lengths some will go to protect themselves. It forced society to ask uncomfortable questions about justice, accountability, and privilege. While Epstein himself is gone, the ripple effects of his actions continue. Survivors fight for justice, authorities investigate lingering questions, and the world watches as new revelations emerge. In the end, the Epstein case is not just about one man. It is a mirror reflecting the hidden dynamics of power, the consequences of silence, and the resilience of those who refuse to be silenced. This is the story of Jeffrey Epstein, a story of power, secrets, and the enduring fight for justice.